Chasing the Mind, podcast number 21. Return of the Chickens with Melissa Caughey. Welcome to Chasing the Mind, hosted by Dr. Angela Johnson and Dr. Stephanie Schwartz, the podcast that explores the art and science of the mind. Each episode, we will feature a topic or guest who offers a unique perspective in answering the following questions. How do our thoughts influence our sense of who we are? How do we impact the world around us? And can changing our minds change everything? Today on Chasing the Mind, Dr. Angela talks with Melissa Caughey, Chicken Whisperer.
Hey, Chasing the Mind listeners. It's Dr. Angela.
And this is Kevin.
And it's been about 3 months since we sat down to actually try to get an episode out of Chasing the Mind.
That is true. It has been quite some time.
In the interest of full disclosure, originally the idea had been that Dr. Stephanie and I were going to take a little bit of a hiatus over the holidays. Just with Christmas and the New Year and kids and family and all the obligations that you have, we thought, okay, well, we'll take a little time off. And as part of that, we were also talking about different ways to change the podcast and to really, come up with some new ideas and new segments. And I was getting really excited about maybe even doing a sort of a serial bit of true crime about some of the work that I do, doing forensic evaluations. And I had all these great ideas, which Kevin can attest to because he had to listen to me go through about 20 or 25 different scenarios of how we could do the podcast. So then Christmas happened and we had, I think, probably the worst run of physical calamity that I've had in probably 20 years.
Well, the flu.
So it started with my son got the flu, and my older one is one of those little cherubs who, when he's really sick, the only thing he really wants to do is lay on top of mama and share all of those lovely germs. So he got the flu, which he then gave to me. And so I ended up going to the hospital with the flu for a day, which wasn't too horrible, but then I was sick for an entire week afterward. And then I woke up at 4 a.m. in the middle of a snowstorm with a fever and all sorts of other really awful symptoms I won't regale you with at this particular moment, and looked at Kevin and said, I think I need to go back to the hospital.
So, yay, 4 o'clock in the morning.
In a snowstorm.
Dig out the car from the 2 feet of snow that we had just gotten, nice and fresh, so that I could drive you off to the hospital.
Right. So then I stayed there for only about 3 days, but to recover from the flu, I think took about a month. And I think just about the time we all recovered, because in between all of that, of course, everyone had gotten all these other little bugs and flus and colds and stuff.
So yes, the little one was sent back to school, who immediately grabbed whatever was available and brought it home again.
I don't know. There's just been a million little bugs and germs. And on top of that, another thing sort of happened, which is that I was in the middle of doing about 100 things for my private practice, and I got offered a job. Actually, I got offered the job kind of like a day after I got back from the hospital. I got offered a job being the program manager for the forensic evaluation group that I had worked for. So basically it was like you were a cat. Now you can herd the cats if you want to. Congratulations.
And one asks, well, why do you want to herd cats? Because
I don't know, because I've always had this like sort of fantasy of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to run a program and then you could do all these great things. It was sort of like, oh, it's like the podcast only like live with people. I could do all these trainings and different things and I could represent the program in different places and all this stuff. And so on top of the full-time job I already had and the 2 kids that I had and the husband that I had and the podcast, I thought it'd be really great to take another full-time job.
So we're changing the disclaimer on this podcast, correct?
That says what? That I can't be responsible for anything I say because I might be just so tired I might say anything?
That could be, or that your company has nothing to do with this podcast.
Oh, my new company that I work for?
Right.
Yeah, no, they don't. But so anyway, so dear listeners that I have been missing and then it's one of those things too where like the longer you don't do it, then the harder it feels to start again because you're like, "Oh my God, now we haven't been on the air for a long time. It's going to have to be like incredibly amazing to come back or it's, we can't."
So we're doing a clip show.
Yeah. So basically, this is the reintroduction that says we're back. We are going to start up again. And we've had a couple of interviews that we had done actually in December that we have never kind of gotten together and put together and, done all the transitions and all the things and editing you have to do to get out a podcast. We hadn't done that yet. So we have those. And so that's part of what we're doing. The other thing is that in all of this stuff, this craziness that's going on with the Johnsons, Dr. Stephanie has had a lot of things going on too. She's had a really difficult work schedule with teaching and other things that she's working on. She's been doing some work for me. She's been had some family stuff going on. She had to go to California for 2 weeks. So there's a lot going on there too. And I don't know if she's going to be on every single episode of Chasing the Mind going forward. She definitely still wants to be a part of the show and she wants to be involved as much as she can. But with her schedule, that's also kind of starting to change, which is why Kevin is pitch hitting tonight.
Yeah, which is why I'm sitting in front of the mic.
His favorite place.
Ah, yes.
So part of what we might be doing is I might be doing interviews. I might be doing more just sort of conversational podcasts around specific issues in forensic psychology. I've had a couple of really interesting interviews that I have done as a guest lately. So I was on a podcast. It's actually a brand new podcast that is being done. I think it's part of like the Something Random media company, which Charles Kelly and the guys who do the Something Random podcast, they're helping to sponsor and start some podcasts. So this lovely woman, Jessie Hitch, is doing a new podcast, I think called Working Out the Kinks. And she had me on to talk about, we're talking about porn addiction and sex addiction. And that was a really interesting conversation. And I thought I should do a whole show just on that. And then I was interviewed tonight by a student at BU who had similar questions about some of these things around pedophilia and what recidivism rates are and all of that. And I thought, I've kind of been doing a podcast for 6, 7, 8 months. And I've never really even talked about
what you do,
stuff I do. So that maybe that's something I should do. And then as part of that, talking about some of the kinds of cases that I do, obviously not specific cases because that would be breaching confidentiality. Although a lot of these are in the public domain, so I probably could talk about maybe some of them if they were really in the public domain, but I couldn't share anything that I kind of got because of my work, but I'd have to kind of figure that out. But I think I have a lot of good stories I could tell.
Well, the court records are in the public domain, and generally the QE reports come out.
That's true. They do through testimony.
Right.
But I really don't want to lose the job I just got 5 minutes ago. So it might be a more general conversation, but definitely around the broader issues of, what are paraphilias and what drives these behaviors and what are, I was on Reasonable Risk podcast last year and we talked a little bit about, the stranger danger thing and the ways that people think about risk in terms of their kids and how it's really overblown. So there's a lot of topics in the kind of work that I do that I think would be really interesting to people. And then also, there's just a lot of interviews that we want to do. I wanted to interview Kristen, who does Sex Stuff with Kristen on the YouTube channel, and she wanted to come on the show and we were going to talk about sex positivity and all sorts of things around that. And then I was talking to Dr. Ann Lipton, who had been on the show earlier talking about dementia. She has a friend of hers who's also a physician who I think has written a book. She also happens to know someone who I think we talked about on the show with her, who was the consultant for Klingon for the Star Trek movies. So we do have like all these great, interesting stories we still want to tell. It's just now we have to think a little bit more creatively about how we're going to tell them. And it may not always be an interview format. It may not always have Dr. Steph here, although she will be here as much as possible.
Okay.
That's it. I did all that talking and they get okay.
What do you want me to say? I'm not the person who's going to be...
I should tell actually another really sort of like an aside. In addition to like all of the Johnson family members being sick, we also had a little bit of a tragedy with the chickens, which is we had a couple of weeks in, was it December or January? I don't know. It was around the time I was in the hospital. It was
during the time you were in the hospital.
Yeah. So it was really super cold, like below zero temperatures. And then with the wind chill, it was, I think one point they were saying it was like 27 below. It felt like it was 27, whatever, some really ridiculous number. And our poor little chickens got frostbite on their combs. Like they had little black and white tips on their combs, which led to a complete freak out on my part and Googling and calling people and researching and all of that. And essentially it was like...
And happily, we did not have to take the trip to the hospital for each of the chickens
we didn't
individually.
Do that. We didn't do that, but we did have to bring them in the house individually one by one and inspect them. Like inspect their combs and put bacitracin and Vaseline on top of their combs and their wattles. And... this is a really good tie-in to the clip show today because we have Melissa Caughey on. Yes. Oh, and their feet. That's right. Yes. But we have Melissa Caughey, who I had talked to in December about her wonderful book on chickens and backyard chickens. And if I had only predicted that I needed to know about how to protect chicken combs, then I would have saved myself all of this stress and angst. And the poor little chickens too, they were really confused as to why they had to come into the house in a towel and sit on my kitchen table on a towel and get goop put on them.
It was a chicken spa.
It was the chicken spa.
I don't see why the chickens had any problems with it.
Yeah, of course now they all come to the back door like food. They actually walk like literally up to the back door where we have a doggy door. And once they figure that out, we're done.
It's gonna be bad.
Because and I should have asked Melissa Caughey this too, but in all of her books, there's these beautiful pictures of these chickens and everything is gorgeous. And the chickens are beautiful and there's green grass and it's all sunny and lovely. And there's no chicken poop anywhere. And I don't know whose chickens these are because mine poop everywhere.
It doesn't seem possible to litter box train a chicken.
It doesn't, no. So this is all a good segue. So we had Johnson sickness from all of us to the chickens.
I think the dog stayed fine.
He just wanted to eat all the time. And he feels neglected.
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody was at the hospital. So.
He has mood dysregulation issues. He's depressed.
So maybe we can do an episode and interview the dog.
Or maybe we could I wonder if there is anyone out there who does therapy or like some sort of treatment with depressed dogs.
You know, you joke, but I'm sure there is.
I'm totally not joking, and I'm sure there is. There's somebody out there who's got a degree in clinical psychology and like behavioral medicine or something, behavioral veterinary medicine, who like has somehow combined this into a shtick.
Veterinary psychology.
That is fascinating. I am going to Google that. I'm going to Google that. So Mind Chasers, I hope you've been keeping up with what's been going on the page. I did also promote a show. I was on Joe Sanic, who was on my show in December, but he had me on for the first week in February. I was one of his fierce females in February, talking about how to start a forensic practice. So I was on that episode. So I have been kind of podcasting, just not for my own show, but that's going to change. So this week, you are going to hear from Melissa Caughey, who is going to tell you all about the wonderful worlds of having backyard chickens. And then that's going to give us a little bit, we're going to get the wheels going, the juices flowing again. And then we are going to dive in and see what comes up next. But I am very excited to get going again. I have missed doing this. And if Kevin has to be my co-host, he's just going to have to suck it up.
Okay.
So enjoy this brief interview that I have with Melissa Caughey, and I look forward to releasing soon. Melissa Caughey is a nurse practitioner, backyard chicken keeper, beekeeper, master gardener, crafter, and cook. She proudly contributes to HGTV, DIY Network, Angie's List, Grit Magazine, Community Chickens, and Keeping Backyard Bees. She travels the country presenting on chicken keeping, beekeeping, gardening, and crafting at the Country Living Magazine fairs and the Mother Earth news fairs. Her first book, A Kid's Guide to Keeping Chickens, and her website have won multiple awards, including the Blue Ribbon Blogger Award from Country Living Magazine, Top 10 Gardening Blogs by Better Homes and Garden Magazine in 2014 and 2016. A Kid's Guide to Keeping Chickens has won the 2016 Learning Magazine Teacher's Choice Award and the 2016 American Academy for the Advancement of Science Prize for Excellence in Science Books. Her second book, How to Speak Chicken, came out in November 2017. Melissa Caughey currently calls Cape Cod home, where she lives with her husband, her 2 children, and a menagerie of animals. So I guess my first question to you is, what is the best thing about having backyard chickens? Because there's so many things that are great about it.
Right. Well, as a flock owner, I mean, I'm sure that you know, you can agree that nothing beats fresh eggs. I mean, that's so cool. But and I think a lot of people get into backyard chickens because of the fresh eggs and knowing where their food is coming from. And it's kind of like having a pet with a benefit.
Exactly.
You know, but I think that once you do have a small flock of backyard chickens, you start realizing, oh my goodness, just like cats or dogs, they have personalities, they have temperaments like breeds of other animals, and it's just really fun to have them as pets. So I think keeping chickens as pets is just amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things when we first got our chickens, and you know, you have them at first and they're in their little brooder and all that, and then you let them out into the, you know, the backyard where their coop is, and you watch them do all these crazy things.
Yeah.
So like one of the things I wanted to ask you was like, why are they always in such a hurry? They always seem like they have a board meeting that they're late to. They're scurrying around the backyard all the time.
I don't know, I kind of like explaining it like chickens always seem to have this lust for life. They don't ever kind of look in the rearview mirror. They don't worry about what they did yesterday. They're always thinking forward, moving forward. And so I think I try to find a lot of the life lessons just kind of communicated to me non-verbally, just watching what they're doing. And I think that sometimes you can get some of the best life lessons from keeping chickens, you know, from patience to responsibility to respect, all those things.
Well, and they're very proud of themselves too. You talk about in the book about how they make that sort of, it's not really a crow, but it's a noise that they make when they lay the egg.
Yes, the egg song. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the egg song. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all join in.
Song. They do all join in. Does your flock also sing the egg song?
Yeah, they are so, I didn't know that chickens were so noisy. I mean, it's fun, you know, and we live in a city, and so we have really close neighbors, but I'm like, you know, it's a nice sound to hear as opposed to traffic and, you know, sirens and cars. It's like you're sitting there and you just hear these little gaggle of girls just out there chatting to each other.
They definitely, I think, improve the ambiance in the backyard for sure. And they are sweet to listen to and watch. I mean, I always tell my kids, you know, if they tell me they're bored, I tell them, go out and watch chicken TV. There's always something on.
So tell us a little bit about the inspiration for writing the book about how to speak chicken.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of it just came from keeping chickens over the years. I know that myself, not growing up on a farm or having an agricultural focused life, I really didn't know that much about chickens, and I was naive to them. And I think it was kind of like an onion.
Mm-hmm.
As you kind of, first the outer layer is just, okay, they're beautiful, and they lay eggs. And then as you peel back the layers of the onion and you get deeper and deeper into understanding what it truly is like to keep chickens, it just keeps getting more and more amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I say that word amazing a lot, but I don't really know of anything else to describe it. And surprising, I guess, that you would never think that you could love a chicken as you would a dog or a cat, like any other pet, but you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, that's something that I just absolutely adore about chickens.
So tell us about a little bit about the process you went through to learn about how chickens communicate, and just maybe give us a couple of examples of what you learned about how chickens speak.
Okay, so you learn by watching. I think we're all students, whether we're formally in school or whether we're not. We learn by watching others. We learn by watching television. We learn by just observing the natural environment around us. And the same way, chickens also learn. All species learn using some of the same techniques. And I think it's just when you spend time with doing anything, whether it's learning a skill or whatever the specialty is, you just really start paying attention, and somehow you start wondering and questions. And with my background in medicine, I'm always thought to question the why
Mm-hmm.
and understand why things are happening and try and explain things. And so I think that kind of led me to thinking, am I truly a crazy chicken lady? Is this really happening? Or am I somehow putting my own emotions or my own thoughts, putting them onto the chickens? But, come to find out, when I started looking at some of the scientific literature that was out there, I wasn't crazy.
Mm-hmm.
These things have been proven by people who have dedicated their lives to study chickens. That's pretty cool.
Wow, that's so interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
and what are some of the misconceptions people have about chickens? Because I know people think, when you tell them like, oh, I'm getting chickens, they're like, huh?
Yeah. I think some of the misconceptions about keeping backyard chickens, one is that somehow they're going to destroy the property value of every house in like a 5-mile radius.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not the truth. Chickens don't take up a lot of space. They're portable if they have to be moved. Chickens don't cost a lot of money to keep.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, the most expensive thing is the coop. The fact that chickens make a lot of noise. If you have a rooster, that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
But hens are usually pretty quiet. They're not crowing. They do make vocalizations throughout the day, but a lot of it is just chatter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's some of the misconceptions. Some of the misconceptions that they're stupid animals, that they don't have emotions, that they don't feel pain is
Mm-hmm.
a big one. I'm constantly surprised when I have people reaching out to me or asking for help with their flock that some of the things that they refer to show people even doing home surgeries on animals, their chickens, and I think, gosh, that chickens feel pain.
Oh.
And also, other misconceptions, I think, is that because their brains are so small that they can't possibly be able to do higher thinking.
Mm-hmm.
They can't. So a lot of things, I guess. You can get me really going on just that one topic.
Well, there's a lot in the book too about that, about the things we don't understand, about the way that they organize themselves. They have a cooperative group experience, and in like
Mm-hmm.
and the way that some of the things that chickens do have worked its way into our language. Pecking
Exactly.
order, that kind of thing.
Humans have big egos, don't we? In general.
Yes, that's true.
And I think that somewhere along the line, somebody's ego said, "Oh, they're just dumb, stupid animals," and that philosophy stuck. And I guess part of writing this book too is kind of to overturn it and say, "Hey, every living thing has value
Mm-hmm.
and a purpose, And we need to just take a step back and respect everything around us.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like that's changing a little bit. I mean, I know you're in Massachusetts too, and we had that whole referendum last time about, thinking about the way we want to keep animals that we use for our food. And I think people are changing their minds a little bit about that, which is great.
I do too. So, moving in the right sense of the direction, I think.
So what would you want people to know who maybe are thinking about having chickens, but they're, maybe unsure. They kind of appreciate them, but they're not really sure how to go about it. Where would you tell people to start?
Well, I think what I would do is tell people to, first of all, talk to their friends or people they know that keep chickens and find out if it's for them. That's also a good way to have a backup plan. Just in case you don't like keeping chickens, then maybe they would be willing to take your chickens if you don't like them. So that's kind of a good thing. The next thing, I say go to the library and take out a bunch of books on keeping chickens and do all the research you can. Keeping a flock of chickens, I tell people, is usually somewhere between the maintenance of having a cat and a dog. And they're inexpensive. Like I said, the most expensive part of the chicken keeping experience is their permanent housing, the chicken coop. I would encourage them to check out both of my books. My first book, A Kid's Guide to Keeping Chickens, gives you everything you really need for families to get started. And then I say take a leap of faith, because you don't know unless you try. And sometimes things like keeping a backyard flock of chickens will change your whole life. It did for me, and I had no idea. And if I didn't take that initial leap of faith, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Wow. Well, I really want to thank you for taking time. I know you're very busy. You have many, many things that you're doing. So I thank you for taking the time to talk to us about this. I am a big advocate, and I want to encourage people out there to research and also to read your books. And can you tell our listeners about your new book and where they can find you online if they want to follow you and get more information?
Oh, gosh, thanks, Angela, for the reminder. Sure, of course. The new book that was just released this fall is called How to Speak Chicken, Why Your Chickens Do What They Do and Say What They Say. And my second book is that was released a little while ago is a Kid's Guide to Keeping Chickens. And you can get those at your favorite booksellers, independent booksellers, as well as online, and your regular standard traditional bookstores, brick and mortar. And you can find me on my website, which is Tilly's Nest, Tillys Nest. And I also have social media pages on, various platforms. You can find me, and I do tend to answer people's emails and so forth. So I look forward to hearing from people, and I would just like to thank you so much, Angela, for taking the time to have me on your show. It's been really fun.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, and this is terrific. And listeners, we will have links to all of Melissa Caughey's information on our show notes, and I really, especially with the holidays coming up, I think giving someone a beautiful book about chickens is a great holiday idea.
Oh, thank you. It's the perfect size for a stocking or a Hanukkah gift, for that matter. It's a 6-inch by 8-inch book, 144 pages of sheer chickenness.
Yes, and it's wonderful. So thank you again so much for being on the show, and good luck with your flock and your books. And I'm gonna put up a picture of our coop too, because my husband did a great job. He actually built the coop himself. So,
I would love to see it. I'd love to see it. And who knows, maybe our paths will cross at one of these New England poultry shows. That would be fun.
Oh, that would be great. That would be wonderful. Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much, Angela.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Chasing the Mind. Today's episode featured music from purpleplanet.com. Please visit our website at chasingthemind.com, where you can find information about Melissa Caughey and find links to her website and books. You can listen to past episodes and read about upcoming guests and events. And you can find our link to our Patreon page. Chasing the Mind is intended to provide information and entertainment and is not intended to substitute for professional mental health assessment or treatment. The opinions expressed by the doctors and the guests are their own and do not reflect professional advice. Information offered by the doctors does not create a therapist-client relationship. Please seek professional help with a mental health treatment provider if needed.